Hi, it's Jorge from Oso Fast Reviews. Today I'll be reviewing American Horror Stories, Season 8, Episode 4, Could It Be Satan? Today I'll be doing it a little bit different. I'm going to basically be doing each one of these in between the commercial breaks. I know in the past some of my reviews and comments I haven't been able to do kind of live feeds for you guys. So I'm going to try it out this way just to see if how this format goes. So basically each commercial break I'll be kind of going through, giving my thoughts on that part of the episode so far. So yeah, hopefully let's see how this goes. So American Horror is about to start, so stay tuned and I'll see you guys back in a couple minutes. Okay, so this first segment starts off with Michael eating breakfast with basically Kathy Bates, and they kind of start off with this satanic prayer, which I thought was kind of interesting. From there, it goes into, Kathy's character talking about how, she killed her first husband with this meal. And, Michael's character just kind of laughs a little bit. And then he's like, oh, you really didn't do that. And she's like, yeah, you're right. It was my first 3 husbands, which I thought was just kind of a funny little haha scene. From there, you kind of jump back into the bunker. And you kind of see him talking to Kathy Bates' character and her kind of understanding her role in this thing. And then he kind of feels a presence, and you kind of flash over to the dining area where all the witches are kind of getting up. And that's when the main ones are kind of telling like Coco and Madison and all them, like, hey, we put a spell on you to protect you, so you don't really know who you are, which I thought was kind of interesting. But I guess obviously they had to have known who they were, you would think, especially with the way the interview process went and all that. But anywho, Emma Roberts' character, she was cracking me up because I like her swagger that she brings to the show and her character. But thought it was hilarious how she basically called out Coco for being the weakest one, but yet the fastest one to wake up, which I thought was interesting. From there, they kind of turn around because Michael is at the top of the stairs, and he basically asked them, how can they defeat him when he's already won? The one part which I thought was interesting, I forgot the one witch's name, but how she was saying how she thought that the end of the world would be, with fire and ice, and not with witches and warlock. So obviously we know that Michael now is a warlock and he's not Satan himself, which I think is kind of neat. But yeah, that's it for the first commercial break. I'll see you guys back here in a little bit. All right, and we're back from the next commercial break. Here we kind of jump right into kind of going back into what I thought was a witching school, but it quickly shows you that it's a warlock school. And you see all these boys kind of doing all these chants and things like that. And there's this one kid who was having some type of issues. From there, the class kind of gets disrupted, and the professor goes there. They see John Henry, this guy named Ariel's there, and they kind of show them this interrogation video, which just goes completely wild. You can't see who it is getting interrogated, but I'm pretty sure it's probably Michael. And you kind of go and see him just destroy this detective who was beating the crap out of him in just a crazy way. From there, they start talking about how this person could be the alpha, and I'm guessing that's, just by logic, when you say alpha, it's probably the strongest person there. They all kind of go into trying to figure out if they should see him or not. Ariel ends up going, sees him at the jail cell, talks to him. He tells Michael that he too is a warlock, which I thought was interesting. Ask him what happened, and you kind of see this scene where Kathy Bates' character is basically asking for a goat head to do this, type of ritual. The butcher obviously is saying no. Michael goes up and is like, you shouldn't talk to her that way. And the butcher just like curses at Michael. And then next thing you see is him kind of closing his fist and opening it, and 5 knives just fly out and stab the crap out of this butcher, which I thought was crazy cool. Um, from there, Ariel's trying to get a little bit more information from Michael, trying to decipher, like what he was going through. And at that point, I'm figuring that Ariel's just trying to figure out if this was kind of like a fluke thing or if it was him controlling the action. He ends up releasing Michael from the jail, and while he's walking on, another cop comes out, and Ariel, just kind of puts him against the wall, lets him know that he'll probably pee on himself and he'll be okay. But as they're turning the corner, Michael straight up just, it almost looks like he does like another head explosion. So definitely Michael's all for killing, and he can control his powers very well. I think more than they even know at this point. From there, you kind of jump in, and Ariel's introducing everyone to Michael, letting them know about kind of how they had this huge building here, but when the witches kind of uncovered them, how the townspeople went a little crazy and destroyed everything, so they went underground. And then he kind of goes there and meets all the other warlocks, or training to be warlocks. Definitely interesting. This episode so far is, I guess it's giving you a lot of backstory on Michael, so I'm definitely excited to see a little bit more about the characters. Definitely want to know more about this Ariel guy. I think they called him a Grand Master, so that'll just be neat seeing how they keep, going into this. And of course, I'm just waiting for the witches to come out and do their thing, but I'm pretty sure that'll be in the second half of this episode. But yep, that's about it. I gotta go back to this to see where we're at, but I'll see you guys here shortly. All right, and now they go back and they kind of do a quick interview on Michael. These, I'm just gonna call them the four horsemen. It just kind of feels right. And they kind of talk about how, being a level 4 is kind of like the highest level they can be. And Michael very quickly goes and asks them, what level are you guys? And they're all level 3s. From there, they make him go through a series of tests, just to kind of see where he's at skill-wise, even though he's only been there for a month. You know, the first part that struck me was how Michael quickly knew Ariel's sentence that he was trying to tell him when he was giving him direction. And I think the first test was finding a book that they hid while only looking through a mirror. So he finds it, and kind of puts his hand through the mirror to actually grab it, which I thought was kind of very cool. Visually, this segment was kind of cool. The next one was basically teleportation, where if you can think you can be there, you'll transport there. And they end up using a brick and a knife as motivation, which I thought was hilarious. And he ends up passing that with flying colors. The next one, which I think was the best visually shot, was when they were talking about turning water or the water molecules into snow. Visually, this was done very nicely. They kind of have very cool shots of Michael from like different angles. And next thing you know, there's snow everywhere. Snow's already covering the ground, so pretty instantly he makes that happen. But then it's almost like if he loses control of his powers in a sense, and he just makes it Arctic cold to the point where the four horsemen are actually having trouble. One of them, I forgot the Asian guy's name, but he was struggling to even breathe at one point. He was saying, from there, Ariel has to go ahead and just stop Michael. Michael really has no idea what he did, or so he says. I'm not too sure about that still. He does end up getting a bloody nose. From there, it kind of jumps into the four of them talking, where they very clearly talk about how each one of them can actually perform one of those acts, but none of them can do all three, which Michael kind of did with ease. So from here, you kind of see how powerful and strong he is. They do talk about how this could be their kind of like their time, when they're able to fight against the witches and go head to head with one of their supremes. So this is definitely going to, I think, end up being a full out war here coming near in this next part of it. So yeah, that's kind of about it. So far, really, really cool. Definitely like seeing the journey of how kind of Michael's getting to where he got. But I'm gonna let you go because I want to keep watching this and see what happens from here. So I'll be back in a second. All right, and now we finally get to go in deep with the witches. Very similar, kind of just jumps right into seeing how the witches were kind of doing the same type of tests with their, I guess, students, you would call them. And theirs was a little bit different. The test that they were doing was changing the color of a rose. I thought it was kind of neat here seeing how Mallory is basically the yin to Michael's yang. She was able to not only change the color of the rose, but then also made them into butterflies once the rose petals fell, which I thought was just such a cool thing. I will say this season the filming is definitely very, very cool. From there, you kind of see that they get called into a meeting with the warlocks, which I think is odd because I would think that the warlocks and the witches would be fighting each other or against each other. So I thought that was definitely very interesting. From there, you kind of see them driving up to their house. And I will say during this scene, Myrtle Snow, I believe, is the witch's name. She's just so well spoken, so just her tempo that she uses is just on point. I love it. From there, you know, the warlocks are telling them about Michael and his powers, and how they think, you know, his powers are up in par to the Supreme. Very quickly there, Cordelia, you know, kind of interrupts them and basically puts them in their place, letting them know that men aren't equal to women when it comes to spells or things like that. They start talking about how they want her to do the 7 levels of testing, something like that. I forgot what it was. But instantly, you know, Cordelia says no, she's not going to do that because she lost Misty to these tests. And then they kind of go and start talking about how she abandoned Queenie. And this, I think, kind of hit a chord with her because she definitely tried everything she could. And she said how she was trapped in a hotel. And instantly here, I knew that this was going to be a tie back to yet another season. So you kind of go into seeing Cordelia trying to save Queenie. And no matter how many times she tries to get her out of the hotel, Cortez, she just can't, which I thought was such a unique thing. And then it gets to the point where Queenie even tells her at one point just go because she can't, you know, get her out. From there, you kind of get a glimpse into Michael's room, and you kind of see him kind of glazed over and just sketching, and he's basically sketching the Cortez Hotel, which I thought was very neat. Immediately from there, you kind of see Michael enter the hotel room, and everything's just kind of different. Evan Peters' character, I forgot what the guy's name was when he did that season, but even he was like, wow, this is another live one, but yet so dead inside, which I thought was such a unique way of writing it, and just saying that thing. So Queenie, of course, asks, what do you want? And he basically just tells her just point blank to remove her from what Cordelia couldn't do. And then he did it, and that was just dope, just kind of seeing how Queenie was so scared to just walk through because she knew what was going to happen and getting through. And then it cuts into commercials right when he says, we have to get another person. So I am definitely stoked to see who this other person is. So I'm going to go because I want to rush to see who this next person could be. I'm wondering if it's going to be, my only guess, it will be someone from Freak Show if I had to take a wild stab at it right now. Because they really haven't talked much about that at all. But either way, looking forward to it, and I will talk to you guys back here in a few seconds. All right, and we're back, and I think this should be the final commercial break here. But you kind of go into this long line, and at the front of it, you kind of see Madison working customer service. Basically, this lady's trying to return like a slow cooker that just has rotten meat in it with like maggots and everything in it. And then 2 people are kind of confusing her with Lindsay Lohan, which I thought was hilarious. And then it almost looks like, this is Madison's like a trippy version of her own little hell, which I thought was interesting. From there, her manager comes and kind of shocks her with what looks like a cattle shocker, which I thought was interesting. Tells her to go, fold some towels. It's almost like if she'll be reliving the same nightmare over and over and over again. So while she's doing the towels, Obviously, Michael comes in once again, and she instantly recognizes that he's not supposed to be there. And he finds that peculiar, and she kind of tells him, this is her own personal hell. And Michael just kind of smiles and basically tells her he can get her out of there. From there, Madison just kind of goes into full blown hoe mode, and she's talking about how does Michael want her to like give her a blowjob, or if she just wants to ride on him for a little bit. And then, which I thought was the funniest line of the thing, is Queenie comes out of nowhere and even calls her a hoe, and she's like, "Man, even in the afterlife, you're still a hoe," which I thought was just funny, just the way Queenie is. From there, you kind of get a quick glimpse back at the warlock table, um, and you kind of see that the Supreme right there is she's Sarah Paulson's character. She almost feels something, and when the other witches come and ask her, is everything okay, she says yes. And then while the witches are walking, definitely the camera angles that they were using, and just kind of you can just feel their swagger, which I thought was just super dope. And it's kind of neat how they were going flashing back and forward, going from the witches kind of leaving and looking at just the feet of Michael, Queenie, and Madison kind of walking towards them. So I thought that was really, definitely going to be a dope scene when they see each other. And then finally, once they leave and they get up to like the mainland to go to their car, you kind of see everything happening, and Queenie just gives her a little wave, and Cordelia's just kind of in shock. And I think it's one of those moments where she kind of sees that she's met her match and instantly faints, which, I definitely did not see that coming. So I wonder what that will do in terms of making Michael the Supreme. So definitely going to be real interesting. I think moving forward, because obviously that's kind of how the episode ended. My thoughts for, this kind of next episodes or next couple episodes. In the beginning of this episode, you kind of hear Cordelia telling them how they put a spell on them so they wouldn't know who they were and to put them asleep. I think that's kind of where it goes with all the characters in this season, like Coco and all them that they brought back to life. I think all of them had special strengths, and they put them to sleep because they never got to determine which one was going to end up being the Supreme. And obviously we know who it is, which is Mallory, but it'll just be interesting to see how that all plays out. So I definitely think that they put a spell on them to kind of shelter all of this, so that when this time did come, Michael wouldn't know or wouldn't be able to tell. It's almost like her last hurrah. But overall, this episode was phenomenal. I definitely loved the whole backstory of Michael, trying to really understand him, seeing just how powerful he truly is. So definitely looking forward to this rest of the season, seeing how he's going to use his power, which I'm guessing now they're going to start touching on all the other seasons, just kind of like jumping in and out. Definitely wasn't expecting him to bring Madison back to life. Like I said earlier, I definitely thought it was going to be someone from like Freak Show or something like that. But overall, this is just going places, so I'm super stoked. Definitely let me know your thoughts, your reactions to this. Let me know if you like this format, kind of going through commercials. But overall, yeah, this episode, 2 thumbs up. If you like what you see, definitely give it a like button here. Feel free and subscribe. I'll be doing a new episode of this, every Wednesday night. So for all my American Horror Story fans out there, keep it locked down, and I will see you guys next week.